Mullinger's Weekly Ramble.
Hello, my friends. It is Friday, the 10th of October, 2025, which of course means it is time for episode 69 of Mullinger's Weekly Ramble. And what a packed episode we have. My goodness, we've got so much in this episode. We've got Toronto Raptors, Toronto Maple Leafs, Toronto Blue Jays. We've got armed robbers. We've got comedians getting into bed with mass murderers. We've got Taylor Swift. We've got so much in this episode. So before we go any further, though, it is very vital that I inform you that this very special episode of Mullinger's Weekly Ramble is brought to you by my amazing friends at St. John Airport and Pascan Aviation. That's right, Pascan Aviation have you covered with flights to Halifax, Montreal and Quebec City from my beloved St. John Airport. Friendly service Monday to Friday, one free checked bag. Finally, a bag that doesn't cost more than your plane ticket. Promo fares are available now at pascan.com. And I should say, you're going to be hearing all about Pascan later on in this episode, because this week I had the immense pleasure of boarding a Pascan plane and meeting all of the crew. That's right. So we will kick straight in. So this is my first time in 69 episodes recording an episode in the evening. Quite often I'm recording them at 6:43 a.m. It is now 6:43 p.m. I'm doing this for a number of reasons. None of them particularly interesting. I got back from Cochrane, Alberta a few days ago. Had a wonderful time at the Cochrane Comedy Festival. And I'll be honest, I came back and hit the ground running, and I've been a bit run down today, which I'm so embarrassed to admit, because I literally never stop, I pride myself on not taking a breath, and even when I do feel run down, I keep going. But I didn't feel great today, so spent the time, obviously, working at a desk, writing, pitching ideas to comedy festivals, to comedy shows, writing new jokes, writing chapters for my book, doing some research. And I guess by research, I mean watching comedy videos, which is always a wonderful thing. Had a terrible moment earlier this week when my VHS video recorder broke, but thankfully I was saved by a very kind gentleman on Facebook Marketplace, who it turned out actually I'd met before. Thank you very much, Chris, who we had met 10 years ago, actually, when I did a gig for the Comedy Works for TD. So anyway, too many sidetracks already, when not even 2 minutes in. I will just very quickly point out that Pascan Aviation is back, reconnecting the region with friendly personal service from St. John Airport to Halifax, Montreal and Quebec City, Monday to Friday. Okay, so we're going to kick in to the episode. So yes, my point is I'm recording in the evening. You're going to be hearing this. I'm recording it Thursday evening, but you're going to hear this. Well, you're going to hear it whenever you want to hear it, basically, because that's the whole point of a podcast. It's not live, is it? But this will be dropping tomorrow morning, Friday. So you'll listen right now when if you subscribe to this and you listen to it when it lands, which some of you do, by the way, and thank you very much for doing that, because I have more energy in the evenings. Maybe I do, because normally I'd be gearing up to getting on stage right now. I've been so run down all day, and I just went out for a nice walk up Appleby, down Dunedin, with the dog, got some fresh air. Suddenly, I've got a whole new lease of life. Okay, the point I'm trying to make is that we've got so much to come in this episode. It is indeed, this is in 69 episodes, first one done it in an evening. So anyway, you're listening to this Friday and beyond. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Bosh, love your ramblers. Let's kick in. It is 69. Let's address the elephant in the room. Let's just appreciate the number. Look, statistically speaking, I know 69 is the most immature number in existence. It is a number that turns even the most serious adult into a giggling teenager. Why is that? I mean, we all know that it is a position. It's funny, isn't it, that people just always giggle when something is 69. You see people, pretty much everyone that works in the porn industry has a number plate with 69. It's not the only sexual position. I guess it's only. Are there any other sexual position? Why is it that a 69er? Was it because the numbers look like that? Or was it because it was numbered 69 in like the Joy of Sex or in the Kama Sutra? Let me know. There's an interesting fact. I remember being at it's weird that everyone knows. I remember my kids being quite young and being at their grandparents' house, and their grandmother saying, "Oh, this is was before their grandfather turned 70, and she said at the dinner table, it's his last year in the 69 club," and both kids, quite young, burst out laughing. And I thought, how on earth do they know what? Well, I mean, obviously they've walked in on it a few times, but then. That's I'm not saying that has happened or hasn't happened. My point is, we've made it this far, so we're going to be mature about this. 68 is a serious number, insightful, moving. 68 was an insightful, moving episode. I think we can agree. Now there's this one. So I'm saying that this episode is going to be a little bit more intimate than most. And I should point out, let's also have a shout out to all the legends who left us at 69. I mean, it is a it's not just a sexual position. 69 represents many, many things. We lost the following people at the age of 69: David Bowie, Prince, and George Harrison. That is not a bad club to be a part of. That would also not be a bad group of people to be doing a 69. But anyway, people born in 1969: Jennifer Aniston, Matthew McConaughey, and Ice Cube. So this episode, I guess, is in somewhere between Friends, Dazed and Confused, and Straight Outta Compton. Right, here we go. Let's go. We've addressed the 69 thing. We've addressed the elephant in the room. That is that. Should we move on? What do you want first? I know you can't answer me. Do you want armed robbery first? Do you want well, I mentioned the comedians getting into bed with mass murderers. I'm, of course, talking about the controversy surrounding the Riyadh Comedy Festival. I know I addressed it last week. Since that, there are some comedians that have managed to do it and kind of come back under the radar and not really face much of a backlash. Bill Burr, however, has, I think it's fair to say, received the biggest backlash of all. Why is that, do you think? So some people have gone on, Jimmy Carr, obviously put a question, but everyone kind of knows what Jimmy Carr likes, and he likes money. The gay comedian Jessica Kirson has did it, but then regretted doing it afterwards, and is now giving the money that she got to a human rights charity. Louis C.K. has been discussing it, again, not someone that anyone necessarily. But so why is everyone so upset with Bill Burr? And so, just to be clear, the Riyadh Comedy Festival has been promoted as the world's biggest comedy festival. It's in Saudi Arabia, where basically a bunch of my and your comedy heroes went to tell jokes for a regime that, how can we put this politely, doesn't exactly have the best Yelp rating on human rights. Now, crucially, this is not, as Bill Burr tried to frame it, him going to Saudi to perform for sweatshop workers. This was him being hired by the people who chopped up a journalist from the Washington Post with a bone saw and put him in a suitcase. The people that ordered it and did it. For weeks, people have been calling it out, kind of, why are American comedians doing gigs for a government that bone sawed a journalist? And as I just pointed out, that is not a metaphor, that actually happened. So when the time actually came for them to perform, the jokes weren't about that. The jokes turned out to be, in the case of Dave Chappelle, about how it's easier to talk in Saudi than it is in America. Now, he's been pulled up about this comment. He's referring to the whole controversy about the shooting of, well, I've forgotten his name. Have I forgotten the name of the guy that's all over our socials? Maybe it's best I don't say it. I don't want to get caught up in something. The gentleman who was obviously tragically shot a few weeks ago, who I obviously disagree with on almost everything he said, but obviously do not wish harm on anyone ever. Dave Chappelle made the joke in Saudi that it's easier to talk in Saudi than it is in America. Now, he's been pulled up on this point, actually even by Louis C.K. on the Bill Maher show. I would point out that even though that is obviously not true, I will, for once, actually, and I wouldn't normally do, but given his recent, I will defend Dave Chappelle in the respect that probably was a joke. Obviously, he said that during a stand-up performance, and I will not defend many of the offensive things he has said in stand-up performances. But to be fair, him saying it's easier to talk in Saudi Arabia than it is in America right now is clearly a joke. But still a ludicrous thing to say given the situation. So Bill Burr, I'm a fan. He's one of the best. He's built his career. I think the reason that people are so upset about Bill Burr's involvement in this is that the reason we've bought into him as a performer, as a podcaster, is because we believe in what he says. When he calls out hypocrisy, he's built a career out of calling out hypocrisy, and we believed him. So to now hear him on his podcast saying, "Oh, it was great. The Royals loved the show. Everyone was happy. They're just like us." They're just like us. That's literally how he described people who regularly imprison their critics, execute bloggers, and dismember journalists and consulates. So they're not just like us. I guess they're more like you, Bill, in that they're multi-millionaires. But last time I heard you were banging on about how you were saying free Luigi because you thought that billionaires should be killed. So anyway, it's like he's basically forgotten everything he's ever said about power, corruption, billionaires, free speech. This is literally a guy that ranted for years about how people sell out their principles and then basically flies business class straight into the arms of the people who literally ban principles. Now, obviously, I get it. Could we all honestly say that if someone offered us $1 million, actually, I believe he was paid $1.4 million, to play a gig in like a gold-plated arena with Beyonce opening, a fleet of camels carrying my rider, you might think about it. I can safely say, I will never get one of these kind of offers, so I can, obviously, you could say it's very easy for me to say. I can honestly say, I couldn't believe last night watching the Maple Leafs Canadiens game, which is a great game, by the way, great season opener. We'll get to that game in a bit. I've said this before about how much I just despise seeing all these gambling ads. Like the amount of, it seems so bizarre to me, given how quickly a life can be ruined by gambling and how many addicts there are out there. It is shocking to me that all of these organizations, and the organizations being the government, the NHL, TV companies, and depressingly celebrities, hawking gambling apps and like, who was it I saw last night doing it? Was it Will Arnett or someone? John Hamm. Was it John Hamm I saw? John Hamm. Surely John Hamm has enough money that he doesn't need to. And it's dangling this carrot when they're like, you haven't got any money? Well, download this app and you can have $100 to gamble with. It literally, they are going around dangling syringes in front of heroin addicts. That is literally the equivalent of it. Can you imagine if someone was going around and someone had been dry for a few months, giving up the booze, and someone was selling alcohol by like literally pouring it in front of them? It's shocking. And the other thing is, what I hate so much about, and again, obviously I believe that people should have the right to gamble. I just think kind of like the cannabis thing seems to work, right? You have cannabis MB shops. If you don't use cannabis, you don't go in, and they don't push it. They don't advertise it. If the shop exists, if you want to buy it, you go and buy it. That to me is how the gambling should exist. The fact that it's become this. So my point is, my point about ethics is that I would never, no matter how much money I was offered, ever advertise gambling on this podcast, in any context, environment, a page in the ad. I would never do anything. I would never promote a thing that could harm people. That and not, I'd say could, obviously I would promote a car could. I would never promote a thing that is designed to harm you. That's the point. And the thing I find so depressing about gambling is that a heroin addict and or an alcoholic can last quite a few years being addicted to their thing before they've completely cleaned out their bank account and everyone they know. A gambling addict can do it in a second, and a few taps of a button, and lying on the couch drunk. And while they're lying on the couch drunk, watching these shows, you get my point. I didn't labour the point. So, the fact is that, but if I ever did do this, I would have the decency to look you all in the eye and say I took the blood money. And that's the thing. Like Tim Dillon, the comedian, admitted he took the money, took the gig for the money, and agreed that he would turn a blind eye to the atrocities they've caused. Because they heard he said that, and that was obviously breaking the contract of not criticising them. Yes, yeah, all the purveyors of free speech suddenly don't care about free speech because the dollar signs are big enough. So Tim Dillon actually got fired from the festival, which again, given the Kimmel outroar, shouldn't all the other comedians, and Jim Jeffries got fired as well for making a comment, shouldn't all the other comedians who've also quit in brotherhood, with allegiance with their fellow comics? No. So the comedians that said I took the blood money, fine. Pete Davidson, whose father famously died in 9/11, was literally killed But he went to do a gig for the people who ordered the hit that ultimately killed his father. And Pete Davidson just is honest and says, yeah, I did it for the money. I think that's sad, but I respect the honesty. Don't sugarcoat it. Bill Burr trying to pull the, I was helping make oppressed people laugh. No. You're taking money from the people doing the oppressing, and it was state. As a crucially point, it is state funded. It's not some underground comedy club in Riyadh, secretly defying the system. Speaking against the system. This is the system. It literally is propaganda with punchlines. So, Bill Burr said how the contracts just said don't talk about religion or the royals, which, correct me if I'm wrong, are the only two things you actually really do need to talk about in Saudi Arabia. That's like being told you can say whatever you want at this dinner, just don't mention the fire while we're all sitting in it. I mean, literally, it's like, I guess this is the point, and this is why people are so angry with Bill, and Bill doesn't understand why people are angry with him, and he keeps getting angrier and angrier, which doesn't help. I think this could be one of the first instances ever of someone actually... I don't really see how I'm possibly seeing him not coming. You read the comments under like his most recent podcast, the rage. I think it's because we feel so disappointed because we felt like no matter how rich he got, no matter how many helicopters he flew around, no matter how many big gigs he did, he was still one of us, and that he had ethics. And I think that's what's so heartbreaking is these are comedians who literally made their names speaking truth to power. They're the ones who told us not to bend the knee to billionaires, to governments, to censorship, and now they've traded that for a photo op with the very people who banned free speech entirely. It's literally like watching Batman do an ad for the Joker's new cologne. So you can probably tell I'm angry but and sad because I literally love these guys. And the D on the end of that is, I guess that was what it is. It feels like having your heart broken by someone that you loved. Because I loved Bill Burr. Him and other people involved, they shaped what I did. They made me believe that comedy mattered, that it could expose hypocrisy, challenge authority, make people laugh while doing it. And now I'm just wondering, I mean, should we actually expect anything about comedians? Because now, no doubt, they're going to pull the, we're just jokers. We don't know what we're doing. We're just jokers. And it's like, because, for example, why am I holding them to higher standards than other entertainers? Because, for instance, I have been watching, obviously, boxing fights that have taken place in Riyadh. I have done pay-per-view. I've sent money to. So why am I so upset with? I think because I didn't think these boxers were good people, and I didn't buy into their worldview. A worldview that involved just getting smashed in the head was the way to make millions of dollars and then, flash it around and never do any good to the world. I think it's because I thought I like to think that comedy is for the good. So is there ever a good time to perform jokes for people who murder journalists? No. I mean, unless the jokes are about the monsters to their face, unless you're going to do what Bill Burr famously did in Philadelphia when he roasted all of Philadelphia in front of all of Philadelphia. So, no, you can't, unless the jokes are about the monsters to the monsters, that's the gig. You speak truth to power, not for it. So I'll move on from that. Sorry, I went on about it for too long. That's one of the things I actually did during my downtime was every now and again I'll go on like a deep dive watching all the comedy by one comedian. And the last week I've done one on Lee Mack, who is the opposite of all these comedians we've just described. Very, very old school type stand-up. One of the sharpest, quickest minds in the UK. Canadian audiences might not realise just how huge and beloved he is. I first saw him live, actually, interestingly, in 2005 at the Montreal Just for Laughs Festival here in Canada. If you get a chance to watch, I've watched every single. He's had 3 stand-up DVDs, and what's interesting about his stand-up is that it's all just playful silliness with the only intentions to make you laugh, and not that it's always clean. It's never offensive. It's never got that horrible, like nasty shoe of a Jimmy Carr joke. I feel like every now and again I'll do this when I'm writing a new show, and I'm obviously writing next year's tour show now. I do a deep dive into comedians that I admire, and it's felt like I've basically done a masterclass in comedy watching him. He's kind of like if you took the kind of lightning wit of Robin Williams, mixed it with the timing of Seinfeld, and added the kind of joke per minute ratio of someone that's like afraid of silence, like a Mark Normand or a Rodney Dangerfield, where it's just bang, bang, bang. He's best known in the UK for a sitcom that I must admit I'm not massively fan of, called Not Going Out, which he writes and stars in. It's considered one of the most consistently funny shows. I guess it's kind of like a corner gas if Brent Bart spoke at double speed and fired off punchlines every 5 seconds. But his stand-up is the genius. It's literally no pretense, no politics, no self-importance. It's just pure craftsmanship. When he riffs, it is phenomenal. It's just jokes. There's no cynicism. So I watched his DVDs and I've become both inspired and depressed, because I'm inspired because he's that good, depressed because it just reminds me how far I have to go to be any good at this job. But that is the beauty of comedy. You can love it, study it, even be jealous of it, and it still makes you laugh your head off. Except it's funny, like the idea of separating the artist from because just sorry, I don't want to go back to the Bill Burr thing, but will I ever find a Bill Burr joke funny again? That is, I think, the problem with what he's done. Forget the legacy, forget the betrayal forget the hypocrisy, forget the contradictions of everything he's ever said as himself, not on stage. Because that's the point, is that we're all going by the things that he said in his podcast over the years. It's the fact that it won't be funny anymore. It's a bit like when Jimmy Carr got caught not paying tax, and Stuart Lee made the point that Jimmy Carr, it's one thing for him to do all the jokes about rape victims and dead children and disabled people, but suddenly when you discover this person is conspiring with tax experts to pay as little as possible to help people like that, or people that are struggling, suddenly the jokes have a different. Anyway, yesterday was my beloved firstborn's 15th birthday. 15 in England was a big birthday for me, because 15 in England meant you could rent 15 rated movies. Now, the rating system was different in England. It was U, PG, 15, 18. Now, unlike in North America, where R-rated movie means you can... An R-rated movie means under 17, not admitted without parent. That's quoting every movie trailer ever from the 80s and 90s. Under 17, not admitted without parent. And obviously NC-17, which basically no movie is, unless it's a Lars von Trier movie with an erect penis in it. So basically any movie you can go with a parent. In England, they're very strict. So, for example... They also invented the 12 rating specifically for the movie Batman, Tim Burton's Batman. And I remember because I was on holiday with my parents in Pembrokeshire and wanted to go and see Batman desperately, and I was only 11. They made that rating because it was too violent for a PG. But basically, this is the film industry obviously pressuring the ratings system, which they obviously pay for, which is a great documentary actually about the MPAA, the American rating. In England, it's the BBFC, the British Board of Film Classification, which in the 1980s and 90s, when I was obsessively, still am, but it was James Furman in charge, who used to annoyingly cut movies. Then as a collector, it was we would try and collect the cut versions, and there was actually a video nasty scandal when movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Exorcist were banned. Anyway, my point is turning 15 was a big deal because it meant I could rent Police Academy, National Lampoon's Vacation, Martin Scorsese's After Hours. It was a big one. Anyway, 15 now doesn't... all right, okay, it did feel like a big one. But the great thing last night was that my son supports the Toronto Maple Leafs, and my father-in-law, Barry, supports the... Montreal Canadiens, and I just love watching NHL hockey with the two of them. Ideally live, but on TV. It's my favorite, most relaxing thing to do because it's one of the only things that I know. It's not like there's lots of things I know I can't do, but I can't enjoy really any movie or book because I just wish I was in it or had written it or just was. But watching comedy, I can't enjoy it because I wish I was up there, or I wish I was, getting bone sawed with Bill Burr and put into a suitcase. So what I love about, because I can't even skate, I'm watching hockey, just admiring the artistry, loving the bonding with my father-in-law, who's also like my best friend, and my son. It's magical. Anyway, so yesterday i.e. Wednesday, or 2 days ago if you listen to this on Friday, 3 Toronto teams won, which I know in normal times, outside of elbows up, it'd be like, Toronto. But, elbows up, we're all in it together. That's 3 Canadian teams won light. So 3 Toronto teams actually won. The Raptors, the Blue Jays, and the Maple Leafs. Now, I don't know what's happening, but this could officially be a sign of the apocalypse. Somewhere right now, a moose has learned to parallel park, and a Tim Hortons drive-thru is moving efficiency. But seriously, how Canadian is this? Every other country gets one national sport obsession. Britain has football. America has arguments or guns. But Canada, we get 3 teams from the same city all winning on the same night. And instead of rioting, we've all just kind of spent the day kind of quietly smiling, going, yeah, it's pretty good. Good for us, eh? See, I'm fitting in. I love how Toronto fans reacted to this as well. It's like one night of winning and suddenly it's all like, this is our year. We hear this every season, every year. Leafs fans in particular, beautiful, delusional optimists. I was there at the playoffs game. I was at the playoffs game where they got booted out of I was at the playoffs game at Scotiabank Centre when they got booted out. So I've seen how they turn. It's like right now, it's start of the season. Anyway, it was a great game, and but at the end of the day, you can be a cynic. You love them or hate them. When the Leafs score, when the Raptors dunk, when the Blue Jays hit it out of the park, you can't help but feel proud. It is like watching your cousin who moved to the big city actually make something of themselves. Like, you're proud, but it's like, don't get too cocky, mate. Still got a bit of way to go. If this were New York, there'd be a parade happening. But in Canada, we're gonna celebrate by nice little Facebook statuses. So the point is, congratulations! I absolutely love the game. My son Hunter, on his birthday, ingeniously, we always do a little sweepstake, not betting, not sports betting, a little sweepstake with each other, putting in a toonie. Who we try and predict the score, the drill. He correctly predicted 5-2 to the Maple Leafs. So well done, Hans. Before I move on to the next subject, I would just like to say, if you're in St. John and itching to get away, Pascan Aviation is back at your beloved and my beloved YSJ. Pascan Aviation is reconnecting the region with flights to Halifax, Montreal and Quebec City. Monday to Friday, fly with friendly personal service. And don't worry about your luggage. You get 1 free checked bag up to £50. Even better, book through Porter for seamless connections, soon through Montreal's new Porter terminal. And it's perfect timing too. This promo fair's live right now for this weekend, for Thanksgiving, for Halloween, for the holidays. So head to Pascan.com and grab your seat before they're gone. Easy, fast and hassle-free, just the way travel should be. And I should point out, I was at St. John Airport. I've been there a few times actually in the last week, which means I've had quite a few of Connections Bistro's delicious chicken mayo chicken salad sandwiches, which Jan, being an absolute legend, did point out. I kept calling them, I've always called them Jan sandwiches. I know Jan is the owner of and much loved community leader Jan used to own the coolest cafe bar beside the Reversing Falls restaurant. It was overlooking the Reversing Falls. I remember one day doing a walk for, was it a cancer walk? And then we went there for, I had an afternoon of Radlers in there. It was absolutely, Jacqueline Reinhardt was in there. And I cannot believe that space is not being used right now. It's literally one of the best spots for a cafe bar in the entire city. Anyway, Jan very kindly, absolute gentleman, so he kindly reached out to point out that it's his amazing team who make the sandwiches, not him. And actually, when I was in there earlier this week with my dear friend Laurie at the airport, picking up another, that's right, as I mentioned, I am the person that goes to Connections Bistro at the airport to buy the chicken salad sandwiches for my lunch, even when I'm not flying. I did actually get to meet the lovely lady who makes them and got to shake her hand. And quite frankly, I was quite starstruck. I love meeting heroes. Where am I going with this? My point is, I was at the airport. I got to go on a Pascan plane, which anyone who's heard my jokes about the old days, do you remember that old Air Canada flight? We're not naming names, too late. The old Air Canada flight that went to and from St. John to Halifax. And I have that joke about the fact that I was at Legends Bar in Halifax Airport, had a few pints, running for the plane, saw the loo, the washroom, the bog, as England would call it, the toilet, the shitter, whatever. Saw the lavatoire, the loo, and as I was passing, I thought, I haven't got time. I'll go for a wee on the plane. Get on the plane, and obviously you get on that tiny little plane that was terrifying. That old plane was like one seat on either side. The pilot does like the seatbelt checks, and obviously, and if you're in the front row, your feet's in the cockpit. Did that so many times that flight. Anyway, there's no toilet on the board. So point being, so in my joke, the next time I flew, I wore a diaper so I didn't have to go through that pain again. It's amazing seeing the size of this Pascan plane. Not only is it big, there's obviously snacks being brought to you on board, but you won't have time to finish your pretzels because the flight's so bloody quick. It's like 30 minutes or less. You can also get beer and wine on the plane. There's a menu of things. Met the pilots, met the crew, absolutely lovely people who love St. John, love their St. John clientele. So basically my point is that for only a fraction, a tiny amount, sometimes I take when I'm really burned out and can't trust myself to stay awake and I need to go to Halifax for a gig, sometimes I take the bus. It's actually only like $20 more than the bus to fly. And it's quicker than ever. Like I say, the seats are comfy, the plane's big, food, drink. It's like I say, it's not like the old days. And there's a washroom on board, is the point I'm getting at. You can go to the loo on board. And it sounds like a weird thing to keep banging on about, but trust me when I say, having been through the old experience. So that's what I wanted to say. What have I read this week? I've only read one book this week. I have started re-listening to Porno by Irvin Welsh, the first sequel to Trainspotting, read by Tam Dean Byrne. I've just actually reread Anne of Green Gables. Just finished that. So I am convinced that Anne has ADHD, which I have a chapter about this in my new book. I know you know this because you've all read Anne of Green Gables. It's just full of so many beautiful lines and thoughts. It's interesting because my obsession with the character of Marianne and Sense and Sensibility, I now realise that Anne is just like Marianne and me. I love how she talks about how I think my prospects of becoming sensible are brighter now more than ever. I've learned a new and valuable lesson. Ever since I came to Green Gables, I've been making mistakes, and each mistake has helped to cure me of some great shortcoming. And she goes through them, the affair of the brooch cured me of meddling with things that don't belong to me. The haunted wood mistake cured me of letting my imagination run away with me. Dyeing my hair cured me of vanity. I never think about my hair and nose now, at least very seldom. And today's mistake is going to cure me of being too romantic. I have come to the conclusion that it is of no use trying to be romantic and Avonlea. I love that idea of learning from her mistakes. Anyway, I am going through and sorry, I did these long pauses are me. That is the worst podcast ever. What podcast you listen to? Oh, I basically was getting distracted reading the book. Is my point because I just love Anne of Green Gables so much, and I just realised that you are now currently listening to a podcast that is the sound of a man reading a book to himself. He's not even reading it out. He's just reading it to himself. I am still doing it. Okay, I've got to put it away. That's what she said. Oi, oi. That's too immature in an episode number 69. So that's the only thing I've read this week. What else have I watched? I watched Richard Pryor Live and Smoking. One of the strangest stand-up comedy concert movies ever. It's Richard Pryor basically performing seemingly to about 20 people, honing his craft. Obviously, any footage of the master is to be embraced. If you've not seen Live and Smoking, it's very bizarre because essentially he is bombing for an hour. And obviously it is still genius, but it's interesting watching a concert movie in which essentially no one is laughing. This is one for Tim Andrews. I watched Punt and Dennis, the Milky Tour live. Would you believe this is basically, he's one of our only British listeners, or one of the only ones that I'm aware of. Punt and Dennis were part of a show called the Mary Whitehouse Experience, for those of you that don't know. Their catchphrase was "Milky, Milky." Yes, that's as weird as it sounds. They're still touring, Tim, by the way. I'm going to get to... You don't want to hear what crap old VHS videos I watched this week, do you? You all want to hear about the big movies I've watched. So I've watched The Smashing Machine with The Rock. So I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'm just going to close my film notebook because that is everything I've watched. I've also watched quite a few Roy Chubby Brown videos as well as part of my weird deep dive. I also today almost finished. I have basically finished the script for The Peninsula 2. That's right, the movie that we made a few years ago with my son and father-in-law Barry, The Peninsula. Hunter basically wrote up a script, treatment, plot, magnificent concept, flashbacks, flash forwards, really, really exciting stuff. And I basically have spent the week polishing it, getting it into, essentially not polishing, it's only polishing. It's not a turd that need polishing. It was a beautiful piece of work that I have turned into a shooting script, is the point that a director can work with. So what's my point? So that notebook's gone. Okay, whiz through the week. What have I done since I saw you last? Platonic season 2 finished. Actually, really liked the ending. Can't remember what happened, but I remember thinking that I've been quite cynical about the season, but actually found it quite good. Went to my friend Janelle's hot yoga class at Yoga House last Thursday. Like I mentioned before, there is nothing quite like hot yoga if you want to sweat, feel great, and also clear your head. Great for mental health, great for physical health, great for if you're looking to lose a pound or two on the old scales. You literally do sweat out a couple of pounds. I basically went in there after a week on the road and went home afterwards, literally £2, one hour. Super fun, cleared my head. So if you want to lose pounds and depression, go to Janelle's wonderful hot yoga class. Then flew to Cochrane. So it's good. So I flew to Calgary for a fantastic few days in Cochrane. I have to say, massive thanks to the great Jake Hirsch, who worked tirelessly to put the Cochrane Comedy Festival together. He's done it for many years now. It was, I have to say, one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had in a long time. Cochrane is a small town near. So obviously I was staying in Calgary, but then and I have to say, met so many awesome comedians while I was there. Adam Ruby, who was the headliner on Friday night, married to the most amazing a woman by the name of Tammy, who turned out to be like my dear friend Nurse Lal from, why is my brain gone? Trinidad. And obviously, as a huge fan of Trinidad and anyone from Trinidad, we bonded massively over that. Anyway, the festival. So Cochrane is what a place. It's like someone took like the best bits of Banff, Calgary, and small town Canada and kind of mixed them together and said, let's make it ridiculously friendly too. Like the Friday night was in a place called The Venue. The Saturday night was in the Lions Club. 2 incredible sold out shows, 2 amazing audiences. Half the town seems to come up both nights. Some people came to both shows just to prove how amazing Alberta hospitality is. Cochrane's one of those places that you kind of think, if I didn't love New Brunswick this much, yeah, I could live there. And best of all, so on Saturday night at the closing gala gig, I come out on stage. The other acts on the bill were phenomenal, and I wasn't hugely happy with how I came out. In that, like, my first 10 minutes wasn't landing. I don't think I had them right. I didn't grab them straight away. I like to come out and hit the ground running. It took me about 10 minutes to get the crowd to kind of, I guess, get me. I would change how I've obviously watched the footage back 3 or 4 times since then, studied it, made notes. I know exactly what I would do next time. Already making plans with Jake to return to do some shows in Calgary in a couple of months. But I didn't hit the ground running. But after about 10 minutes, I got them. And then it was just, after that, it was 50 minutes of plain sailing, I wouldn't say a barnstorming gig, but I was very happy with how it went. I knew there were some New Brunswickers in the room. I knew my neighbour Jen had sent a friend of hers. I knew that my dear friend Doreen Hayes was there, who is the aunt of the amazing Jen Shields. Who, if you live in St John, you know exactly who Jen Shields is. Absolute hero, legend, healthcare hero, Horizon champion, all around, just amazing person, and also a school friend of my wife's. Doreen and I met at a gig in a church called the Rockland in 2019. I knew she was from New Brunswick, lives in Alberta in Edmonton. She drove 3 hours from Edmonton to come to the show, came with a friend, and such a joy that she was there. Kiona Kelly, who used to teach both my kids when we first moved here, and she and her husband Shane, they moved back there 10 years ago. Hadn't seen them in 10 years. They all came out. So after the show, Doreen comes up to the stage with her trusty New Brunswick flag she carries everywhere. So we get a picture together. And then it was this mass, like, descendants of New Brunswickers in the room all come up. And there's like 20 of us, all New Brunswickers, who'd come out to support little old me, just because I live in the place they're all from. Some of them, like in the case of my neighbour Jen's friend, she was actually staying with Jen this summer at that, like, which is literally next door, like meters away from my house. It's her beautiful house. So it's just so funny that this lovely lady was staying, meters away over the summer, and then suddenly we meet on the other side of the country. So much fun. I just live for weekends like that, and it was long days travel coming back the next day, but I went there, I researched, I arrived in Cochrane. Both days I would get to the area early and walk around the streets, lugging my suit around and my backpack, even in the pouring rain, just to get a feel for the place. And again, Cochrane, like Hamilton, where I was a few weeks ago, had a beautiful local independent cinema that I was absolutely taken with. I need to do a book or a feature on all of the independent cinemas in Canada, because there's a great one in Kelowna. There's a great one. There's obviously there was the beautiful Vogue in Sackville, which someone needs to buy and do up. So let's get to armed robbery and the smashing machine, and then let you all go, because I need to go downstairs and I've got date night with my lovely wife, because the Victoria Beckham documentary has landed. Oh, interestingly, there's also a new stand-up special that's hit Netflix today. Matt McClusker, who I'd literally never heard of before. I now know that he is Matt of Matt and Shane. I've never actually listened to that podcast. I know it's one of the biggest podcasts in the world that has led to Shane Gillis becoming one of the highest grossing and highest selling comedians in the world. Again, the rise of Shane Gillis is a truly fascinating thing to be talked about another time. Matt McClusker is his buddy, and I heard him on a podcast I really like, which is called They Might Be Drunk, and it is the comedians Sam Morrell and Mark Norman. And I really, really like listening to them. I will say they both did do the Riyadh Comedy Festival, did it quietly, they're not talking about it. They are up and coming. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, they can afford to turn it down. But they also don't claim to be speaking truth to power. Like, they're jokesmith people. And do I think what they did was wrong? Yes. I think the problem with Bill, I don't think it's a problem with someone doing the gig. I think the reason that Bill Burr and everyone, he's getting all the brunt of it, is that we really thought that he was a principled person, because he told us he was, and he was lying. Okay, we won't keep banging on about Bill, poor old Billy, Billy Bonesaw. We're going to go to armed rob. What do you want first? You can't answer. Wouldn't it be great if you can answer? Okay, one more sip of water. Okay. What did I say? Yes, going downstairs to watch the Victoria Beckham documentary, and that was the point. Matt McClusker has a stand-up special, which I started to watch this morning. And it seems, I don't want to be rude and say it seems generic, but it does. Okay. Great story I read in The Guardian this week about this guy called John McAvoy. And it was one of those stories that kind of makes you question everything you think you know about kind of crime, punishment. And I love crime. Like, I don't love crime, but I'm obsessed with crime. But not disgusting crime. Like, I'm not going to be watching that monster, the Ed Gein thing. Those purient, horrible, like taking a genuine tragedy and turning it into entertainment. Screw you, Netflix. Not any of that nonsense. I'm obsessed with like organized crime. Obviously, still just as bad. I know they're murdering people, but like, for example, this guy. He was born into crime, John McAvoy. His stepdad was an armed robber. His uncle was part of the famous Brinks Mat heist, which if you don't know the Brinks Mat heist, amazing gold bullion robbery in the 80s, one of the biggest robberies in British history. Most of the gold was never recovered, led to literally 26 million pounds worth of gold. It basically invented half the British gangster movie genre. So he grows up watching Sean Bean play his uncle on telly. So by 14, he's like guarding duffel bags full of cash. By 16, he's buying guns. He is living it. He ends up in Belmarsh prison. And long and short of it is, he's in there with terrorists, extremists, bombers, and he thinks this is it. And then somehow his life begins. He discovers not religion, not therapy, not heroin, but a rowing machine. And he starts pulling that thing like his life depends on it, and which I guess in a way it does. It becomes meditation, his escape, his new addiction. Before long, he is smashing world records from inside a prison gym. 3 world records, 7 British ones, no sunlight, no freedom, just pure focus and drive. And the really beautiful part, someone's got to make a movie about this. It's like the Shawshank Redemption, but without a stupid voiceover. Interesting. Rainn Wilson has a really interesting take on. He has what he calls what kids call hot takes. But on that We Might Be Drunk podcast, Rainn Wilson, who plays Dwight in The Office, has hot takes where he says some of the quite controversial things, like why Shawshank Redemption is shit, which again, not saying I agree with that, but it's an interesting take. But basically, he finds a decent. This guy McAvoy finds this prison officer called Darren Davis who sees something in him. Like, he doesn't judge him, doesn't write him off, and he sits there with him while he rows for 24 hours straight. A prison guard and a prisoner becoming best mates through sport and belief. And when John finally gets out, he doesn't go back to crime. He goes to competing. He swims, runs triathlons, wins Ironmans, climbs mountains. Like, he's sponsored by Nike now. It's like a really inspiring story. And I guess I've always been. One sec, I've got to sneeze. Pardon me. I'm fascinated by the criminal world, as you know. The psychology, the codes, the bravado, how people get sucked into it, how they can justify murder, the loyalty, but then also the backstabbing, and how just like behind all that kind of balaclavas and bravado, there's usually like a scared kid that never had a shot. And John McAvoy didn't just turn his life around; he rode his way out of hell, and now he's literally running up mountains to help other people do the same. And if that's not redemption, I do not know what is. And I realized that as much as I love crime, essentially what you take away from those things, like The Sopranos, is these people are basically, no offense, all criminals listening to the criminal contingent who always tune into this podcast, essentially losers. So The Smashing Machine with The Rock, I was absolutely blown away. Now, I should point out, this movie is not going to be for everyone. It is full on an art house movie. It's not a sports movie. I actually watched it on the plane back from Calgary. I actually watched Magazine Dreams with the problematic Jonathan Dean. Problematic because he essentially is unfortunately turned out to be somewhat like his character in Magazine Dreams. In that he, I say problematic, he attacked his wife. That makes him a violent felon, not problematic. Anyway, I realise I like movies that involve very muscular men lifting lots of weights. Who knew? Who knew that that was what I like? So The Smashing Machine is The Rock playing Mark Kerr, who was famously one of the first MMA. I wouldn't say stars, because it's not like his record was huge, but basically he was involved in UFC 3. So before the UFC was what it is today, back when the fighters basically made nothing, and The Rock, Dwight. What's his name? Dwight Johnson? No, Dwayne Johnson. I was thinking of Dwight from The Office. Dwayne Johnson. There was a lot of press this week about the fact it was his worst box office opening ever. It's like, who cares? It's a Benny Safdie movie. It's art house. It's not traditional. I loved it. I'd say it's not what I expected, and I think that's basically part of its genius. It's basically quite relentless in its refusal to do the obvious, and I can't believe that Benny Safdie, I know he's a genius, but the fact that and he's made Uncut Gems, etc., but the fact that he was the least funny thing about Happy Gilmore too, a movie that tragically, unfortunately, is teetering on the edge of forgettable. The fact that Benny Safdie. I mean, there is one good joke actually that Benny Safdie has in Happy Gilmore, and the running joke about him having bad breath is so unfunny. But there's the bit when he breathes to open a door, and the door, device thing says fart detected. I thought that was quite funny because I'm immature, hence banging on about this episode being a 69er. But it isn't just I thought the movie was like Scorsese good. Like I actually think I possibly enjoyed the Smashing Machine more than one battle after another. Although, and part of this is, well, because it's actually not about winning like most sports movies. It's actually about failing, and that is something that I have done throughout my life, throughout my career. Going back to something we were talking about at the beginning, and I can't remember what it was. Well, I guess Anne. Oh, it was Anne of Green Gables. That's it. And mistakes. Not often that you get the Smashing Machine, Mark Kerr, and Anne of Green Gables compared to each other. But The Rock is phenomenal, like career-defining good. Like I actually think he possibly deserves the Oscar more than DiCaprio. Emily Blunt is just the queen of acting, and the scene where they argue it is right up there with Sharon Stone and De Niro's confrontation in Casino. Except here, like I didn't feel like I was watching two great actors performing. It felt real, like visceral and slightly traumatizing, and like all great arguments, kind of both sides were both right and wrong. The dynamic between them, the obsessive pursuit of something, whether it's fighting, comedy, music, whatever your obsession is, like the obsession colliding with the needs of a relationship was heartbreakingly accurate. And it's interesting seeing, like, for example, when I have a big show, my wife knows what I am going through mentally, or knows what needs to happen for, not to compare myself to a UFC fighter, but for example, when I have a Imperial show, she always wants me to book a room at the Delta, basically to make me fuck off out of the house. But basically, it's why we don't. Whenever I go on the road, people are like, "Oh, you have family here." It's like, no. This is. I love this, but it's work and it's obsessional. I have to be obsessed with it for it to be any good. It doesn't come naturally for me, as some of you that maybe don't like my comedy would attest. I'm not naturally funny. I have to work at it, and so it's a job. So I'm in that hotel room all day working. But so our relationship, we understand what has to happen for things to happen. I know her needs, she knows my needs. We know what we have to do to create this marginally successful business. But the film doesn't over-explain any of this, like, or indeed anything about any of them. Learn nothing about Mark Kerr's childhood. There's no flashbacks. It's not a biopic built out of trauma. It literally lives entirely in the moment. 3 years in the life of a man trying to define himself. And the final 3 minutes, I'm not going to spoil the surprise, they shouldn't work. They should be ludicrous. They should be SNL-like, but they actually do. So I actually feel like I watched a 5-star masterpiece on Tuesday night. Cheap night at the cinema. God bless you, Julie, and everyone at Cineplex. I love everyone that works at Cineplex. Immersive, human, brutal. I think for me personally, not to say this has to be a fact, it sits comfortably alongside Raging Bull of one of the greatest fight films ever made. And there's a feeling that I do struggle to find in cinemas these days, like the raw exhilaration I used to get as a kid in the 90s. Sure, 90s wasn't the best decade for music, but it was the decade for film. Nothing will ever top seeing Pulp Fiction for the first time. Do you remember that shock and that electricity, the goosebumps, the tears running down your face when you're like, like Boogie Nights. Again, maybe the Smashing Machine didn't get me there, but I was just in the perfect mood for it, actually. I just got back from run of shows. I knew I had a few days off. I was burned out, feeling emotional, and it was Benny Safdie's use of music and the gritty VHS-like texture of the cinematography, the bold color palette. It just evoked this kind of retro realism. It was messy and alive. It's about being a pioneer, doing something new, and not being remembered for it, crucially. And I think that was the theme. It was the theme of not winning, failing publicly, but finding contentment privately. That is what hit me hard. Like, that is what I related to. The fact that I strive to do a thing that I am not successful at, and yet still have found happiness within that. And I think that's why I'm drawn to combat sports like boxing, UFC, MMA. It's because it reminds me of stand-up comedy. It's you up there alone fighting for yourself. There's people in your corner, but once that bell rings or the lights go up, it's just you. You either destroy or you die on that stage. You win or you lose. Interestingly, I saw the trailer for the Bruce Springsteen movie before it, which I saw was directed by Scott Cooper, who directed Crazy Heart, which Crazy Heart is a movie, of course, about Jeff Bridges playing a country and western star, but I believe it is the best movie about stand-up comedy ever made, even though it's not about stand-up comedy, because the life of the country star in Crazy Heart is the life of a stand-up comedian. So anyway, as I say, the smashing music, it's not for everyone. It's bone-crunching, jaw-snapping violence. I remember Bill Burr once, I've got to stop quoting him now. Maybe I don't. I remember him once saying that being ringside at a UFC fight is like hearing bones break through muffled leather. And he's right. Like, in this, they really show that. I've never been ringside at a UFC fight, and I never will be, because elbows up. I will be ringside at a Fight League Atlantic fight, though. So I saw Smashing Machine in an almost empty Ultra AVX on Cheap Night, which is... So I just hit the mic. Sorry. My hands are waving around the whole time I'm talking. Can you hear them? So does that ever interrupt the sound? Who knows? Critics keep talking about how it's underperforming at the box office, but it seems absurd. But it's ironic. The Rock spent years making mindless blockbusters that made millions, billions even. Then he finally makes a film of substance, and hardly anyone shows up. But maybe that's the point. Just like Mark Kerr himself, The Rock can find peace in knowing he delivered the performance of his life, even if it's not reflected in the box office. It's a private victory, the kind you can only recognise. And that's what the Rock can learn from a lowly, unknown, New Brunswick comedian and a failed or forgotten MMA fighter. You might be The Rock, but when you fail, like Anna Green Gables, like James Mullinger, like Mark Kerr, if you did a good job, which you did, you'd be happy. And that is why I was completely buzzing and completely and utterly inspired by the film, because my entire life is me going out, performing gigs, and if it goes well, and you all laugh, and you all leave happy, and we all share that magical thing together, that is the happiest I get. And I come home completely unknown, unsuccessful, but I have literally lived my dreams, and I can come home and be the best father and husband and dog owner in the world, or try to be anyway. And if I fail, just keep going, because we're all the same, aren't we? Anne, Rock, Kerr, listeners, ramblers, Bosh. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, you want to get to Halifax, you want to get to Quebec City, Pascan Aviation out of YSJ. Lots more next week. Please send me your questions to jamesmullinger@gmail.com. Daphne, give us a call if you're listening, because I want to help you with that thing that you messaged me about. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. Love you very much. Auntie Teresa, if you're listening, miss you and love you. Kyla, Judy, Julie and Judy, Lady Catherine, Caitlin, Heidi. Love you all. Thanks for listening. I'm going to go and watch Victoria Beckham. I doubt it will be inspiring in any way, shape, or form. Thanks for listening.
Mullinger's Weekly Ramble.